You wake up. You don't check the time. You check your balance. Before your feet touch the floor, before you've said a word to anyone, you already know something about your day. How good it's going to feel or how bad. And that feeling didn't come from a person. It came from a number on a screen that isn't even real money. It's not paper, it's not gold, it's a belief sitting in a database that everyone around you has silently agreed to trust. Here's the part that should bother you. You will spend more hours of your life earning that number than doing almost anything else. You will make decisions about where you live, who you marry, whether you have kids, based on that number. Wars have been fought over it. Empires have collapsed because they lost control of it. And somewhere, right now, a handful of people you'll never meet are making decisions that quietly move that number up or down for you and for 8 billion other people. None of this was inevitable. For most of human history, money, the thing you're enslaved to right now, didn't exist. And the story of how it was invented, weaponized, and eventually swallowed the entire planet is stranger than anything you were taught in school. So let's go back, not to your last paycheck, to the very first lie that made all of this possible. Rewind 12,000 years. You're not checking a bank app. You're standing in a village with a sack of grain you don't need, hoping to trade it for a goat. The problem is, the guy with the goat doesn't want grain. He wants shoes. And the guy with shoes doesn't want a goat, he wants fish. This is called the double coincidence of wants, and it's the oldest bottleneck in human cooperation. For a trade to happen, both people have to want exactly what the other person is holding at exactly the same time. Most of the time, that just doesn't happen. So villages started doing something clever. They picked one object, something everyone already valued, something durable, something everyone secretly agreed was worth wanting even if they didn't need it right now. In different parts of the world, that object was different. Cattle in East Africa, salt in Rome, which is where the word salary comes from, cacao beans in Mesoamerica, cowrie shells across Africa and Asia used for over 3,000 years, longer than almost any currency in human history. None of these things were valuable because you could eat them or wear them. They were valuable because everyone agreed they were valuable. That agreement, that shared hallucination, is the seed of every financial system that came after it, including the one running your life right now. You didn't invent trust in money. You inherited it. It was already loaded into the software of human society before you were born. Fast forward to around 600 BC in a kingdom called Lydia in modern-day Turkey. You're a merchant, and every single trade you make involves an argument. Is this chunk of silver actually pure? Is it the weight the seller claims? You have no way to know without melting it down and testing it yourself every single time. Trade is slow and trust is expensive. Then a king named Alyattes does something that changes commerce forever. He takes electrum, a natural mix of gold and silver, stamps it into standardized discs, and puts his own symbol on it, a lion's head. That symbol is a guarantee. It says, this piece has been verified by the state to be worth exactly what it claims. You are now holding the first true coin. This is the moment money stops being just an object people agree to value and becomes a tool of power. Because whoever controls the mint controls the trust. And once you control the trust, you control the trade. Kingdoms that minted reliable coins attracted merchants. Merchants brought wealth. Wealth funded armies. Armies expanded the kingdom. Rome understood this better than anyone. At its peak, the Roman denarius was accepted from Britain to Persia, a single currency stretching across a continent, backing an empire of 60 million people. But here's the warning sign buried in that success. When Rome started running out of silver to fund its wars, emperors began quietly shaving down the silver content of each coin. Same size, same stamp, less actual value inside. Nobody outside the mint knew at first, but prices started rising, trust started cracking. Historians now point to this slow currency debasement as one of the accelerants of Rome's economic collapse. Write that down, because it's going to happen again and again, all the way up to the year you were born. Jump to medieval Italy and imagine you're a wealthy merchant in Florence around the 1400s. Carrying gold across trade routes is a death wish. Bandits, corrupt officials, shipwrecks. So you start doing something new. You deposit your gold with a trusted goldsmith or banker, and in exchange, he gives you a paper receipt. That receipt says, this piece of paper can be redeemed for real gold held safely in a vault. You start trading the receipt instead of the gold itself. It's lighter, it's safer, and everyone treats it as if it were the gold. Now here's where it gets interesting, and where the entire structure of modern money is quietly born. The banker notices something. Most people who deposit gold don't come back for it all at once. So he starts issuing more paper receipts than the actual gold sitting in his vault, lending that extra money out and charging interest on it. This is called fractional reserve banking, and it is, without exaggeration, one of the most consequential financial inventions in human history. It means money is no longer just a physical object being represented on paper. It's now being created out of trust, out of a promise, out of thin air, every single time a loan is issued. The Medici family in Florence built one of the most powerful banking dynasties in Europe on exactly this principle. They didn't just store wealth, they manufactured it, and manufactured political power right alongside it, funding popes and kings. This is the moment money quietly stops being a thing and becomes an idea that behaves like a thing. And once money becomes an idea, the only limit on how much of it can exist is how much people are willing to believe in it. You should sit with that for a second, because it's still true today, in your bank account, right now. By the late 1600s, England is in a war it can't afford, and it needs a way to raise massive amounts of money fast. The solution is the founding of the Bank of England in 1694, the first institution designed specifically to let a government borrow at scale by issuing debt that the public could trust and trade. It's the birth of the modern central bank, and it fuses two of the most powerful forces in human history into one machine: the printing of money and the authority of the state. From here, the story accelerates. Every major economy on Earth builds its own version of this machine. The United States, after decades of chaotic private currencies causing bank runs and panics, finally creates the Federal Reserve in 1913, a centralized authority with the power to control the money supply for an entire nation. For the first time in history, a small, specific group of people sitting in a room holds direct influence over how much money exists for hundreds of millions of people who will never meet them. You didn't vote for that room, neither did your parents, but every dollar in your pocket right now is downstream of a decision made in it. For most of the 20th century, there was still one thing keeping governments honest: gold. Under the system agreed at Bretton Woods in 1944, the US dollar was pegged to gold, and every other major currency was pegged to the dollar. In theory, any country could show up and trade their dollars for actual gold, sitting in a vault at Fort Knox. It was a leash, a limit, a promise that the number on paper still meant something physical and finite. Then, on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon goes on television and ends it. The United States, spending heavily on the Vietnam War and domestic programs, can no longer back all its dollars with gold. So Nixon simply suspends the convertibility. No public vote, no global referendum. One announcement, and the entire financial system of the planet shifts beneath everyone's feet overnight. This moment has a name now. Economists call it the Nixon shock, and it marks the birth of what you live inside of today: pure fiat currency. Money that isn't backed by gold, isn't backed by silver, isn't backed by anything physical at all. It is backed by exactly one thing: trust. Trust that the government issuing it is stable. Trust that other people will accept it tomorrow the same way they accept it today. Since 1971, for the first time in the history of civilization, every major currency on Earth is a belief system with no physical floor underneath it. Not a single one. You have never in your entire life held money that was anything more than a shared agreement to pretend a number matters. And then it disappears completely. Not the value, the object. Somewhere between the 1980s and today, money stops needing to exist as a physical thing at all. Your salary doesn't arrive as cash in an envelope. It arrives as a number, updated in a database owned by your bank, which is itself just trusting a number updated in a database owned by the Federal Reserve. By the time you check your phone this morning, over 90% of all money in circulation globally exists only as digital entries. Numbers on servers, never printed, never minted, never touched by a human hand. Stock markets move trillions of dollars in the time it takes you to read this sentence, based on algorithms trading against other algorithms, faster than any human could ever verify. Entire currencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, now exist that were never issued by a nation at all, backed by nothing but code and collective belief, the exact same mechanism as that first cowrie shell 12,000 years ago, just running on servers instead of sand. Here's the bigger truth hiding underneath the entire story. Money was never really about gold, or paper, or shells, or the number sitting in your account right now. Money was always a technology for coordinating trust between strangers who would otherwise have no reason to cooperate. That's it. That's the whole invention. A shared hallucination, stable enough that 8 billion people who will never meet each other can still build a civilization together. It didn't take over the world by force. It took over the world because it was the single most effective idea humans have ever agreed to believe in unison. So back to you, this morning, checking your balance before you've even said good morning to anyone. You're not just looking at a number. You're looking at the end product of 12,000 years of humans slowly agreeing to trust each other a little more efficiently. From a goat, to a coin, to a paper receipt, to a signature on a vault of gold, to a belief with no floor at all. The money in your account has never been real, not in the way you were taught to think about it as a kid. It was never gold, never paper, never even really a government's promise. It was always just belief, wearing a disguise. Which raises the only question that actually matters. If money is just a story 8 billion people agreed to believe together, who's actually writing the next chapter?